Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
How nice to see you. Some of you I feel like I've seen recently. Some of you maybe never before. I'm very glad to be here. Just in case you don't know, I normally spend a lot of my time dwelling in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm just visiting here, and I'm really grateful and glad to have the opportunity to be with you. If at any point you can't hear what I'm saying, just do something like this. So it's like, I was trying to modulate your voice so you're not yelling at everyone, but also audible. So that's and I have the tendency to emphasize things by speaking really quietly, which is really not a good tendency. So you can always be like, what? It's so nice to get to just sit and quiet down together. You know, I've been traveling for a little while, and a lot of the teaching I'm doing, it's like you come into a place and everyone sits down for meditation for like 15 minutes. And there is something very powerful about having a little more time to just settle into what is. I mean, arguably we could settle into what is anywhere. I mean, that happens, but for some reason it just helps to have absolutely nothing to do. And then things kind of settle on their own. So I hope our practice here today can just be one where we are aware of the body. There's so many things happening in the body. Like there's something happening right now on the lower part of your left thigh. Right now, right? Like on the inside of your left big toe. And when we're sitting here, you know, it's like all that is like the wondrous experience, but it's so easy to ignore a lot of it. So I'm kind of, I don't know if we need like a laser focus. I think we need like a soft focus so we can know the whole body. So sometimes it helps to like know the breath because, you know, the mind wants something to chew on. Like you give it the bone of the breath. I was standing in front of the Zen Center where I practice and teach the most, Minnesota Zen Meditation Center, and we're on a lake shore, on the shore of a lake called Bide Makaska. And this woman was going by and she had 2 dogs, and it was pretty cold, but she wasn't wearing mittens because each of her dogs had a mitten in its mouth. And you know, I've had dogs, so I know that sometimes like your dogs want to do everything but walk in the direction you're hoping to walk. But you know, you put a mitten in their mouth and they're like, oh, I've got a job. So that, you know, our breath is kind of like the mitten in our mouth. But it doesn't need to be our whole life. You know, the breath is an invitation to be aware of the totality of the body. And the universe is our body. So the breath is an invitation to be aware of like the whole thing. The sounds. It's pretty quiet in here. But you still hear little like a toddlers chattering away every once in a while going down the street. We can't hear it, but there's a deer who's been sitting in the backyard since we got here. I saw her when I arrived, and then I went out back, and now she's just sitting there looking. She's just staring like, what are you guys doing in there? She's like, you guys, yeah, you should, like, you're working so hard. I'm just sitting here. Well, we can, of course, we can't see that deer from this perspective. But she's still with us. And we can see, you know, just the simple phenomena of what's here. And the breath, we use the breath because it at least has some motion to it. So it's kind of hard for sometimes to be like, I'm just going to be wholly with the floor. The floor's so boring. It's like, why don't you do anything? Like go in and out or, Well, the breath is always changing. So that just helps. It's a nice helper. You might think, the breath is just this like sort of, I'm aware of the breath or I'm not. I'm good at it or I'm not. But like we can get really intimate with it. It's always producing an experience that's totally new. Every time. Anytime you think something is not new, that's just delusion. The tendency of the mind to say something has been something else. So we can realize some real freshness just through the body and the breath and the senses. And of course, from the Buddhist perspective, everything our mind is doing that would normally be considered non-sensory, so like all the thinking and the feeling and the ascribing of value, that's all just senses too. So, you may or may not know, but in Buddhism we have 6 senses: eye, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and cognition. So everything that you might think is not one of your 5 basic senses is still just a basic sense. And the reason is it's just stuff that's happening. It's just stuff that's happening. Your mind is just stuff that's happening. So you don't have to get into this thing where you're like, that stupid mind. I was going to come to the Zen place and get all like still. Now my mind is just, You might feel that way. Sometimes I feel that way. But it's like the floor. Are you like, stupid floor? You stop being a floor. You don't have to do that. You can just be like, floor, mind. Look at you. The senses are just, leaves are spreading the way they do. It's cool. A friend of mine was practicing with I can't remember who it was, one of these kind of like seminal, prominent people who brought Rinzai Zen to the United States. And the Dokasans there were like really hardcore, the one-to-one meetings. You come in and like you present your thing and then you get like a 1-sentence answer and then a bell. Get out of here. It's pretty great. So this isn't really a style that's all that attractive to me, but my friend found it really powerful. Anyway, he went in one time and he was just like, my mind and all this stuff is going on. And the teacher just said, why don't you ever come and complain about your lungs? Bing! So somehow we think that all this stuff that we would fit into the realm of cognition is somehow separate from everything else, from the other manifestations of the world. And this gets really painful. This gets really painful. So just like you can start to relate to your cup of tea or your bowl of soup or your cushion, it's like great. Soto Zen is great. I go to a lot of places that aren't Soto Zen, so there's no bows to the cushion. And I still walk up to the cushion. I'm just like, it's so great to see you. I feel such a warm, respectful connection to meditation cushions because I've been conditioned through bowing to feel that way. And so I meet them that way. And we can do the same thing with everything that arises in experience. So the conditions of our heart, if you're sitting here, I wanted to get calm and now I'm anxious, or I wanted to get calm and now I'm just sitting there going, why the hell doesn't that guy breathe more quietly? Whatever it is. Someone in here is breathing, I'm pretty sure. So we can just meet it all. I would like to chant with you the Song of the Grassroof Hermitage. What do you call that in here? The Soanka? Page 7. Song of the Grass Hut, I guess you all call it. That's cool. I dig it. I actually want to not recite this, but chant it, and I think you'll pick up on what's going down here pretty quickly, and you're welcome to join in. So I'll chant the title and then we'll go. Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage. I've built a grass hut where there's nothing of value. After eating, I relax and enjoy a nap. When it was completed, fresh weeds appeared. Now it's been lived in, covered by weeds. The person in the hut lives here calmly, not stuck to inside, outside, or in between. Places worldly people live, he doesn't live. Realms worldly people love, she doesn't love. Though the hut is small, it includes the entire world. In 10 feet square, an old man illumines forms in their nature. A Mahayana Bodhisattva trusts without doubt. The middling or lowly can't help wondering, will this hut perish or not? Perishable or not, the original master is present, not dwelling south or north, east or west. Firmly based on steadiness, it can't be surpassed. A shining window below the green pines, jade palaces or vermilion towers can't compare with it. Just sitting with head covered, all things are at rest. Thus this mountain monk doesn't understand at all. Living here, he no longer works to get free. Who would proudly arrange seats, trying to entice guests? Turn around the light to shine within, then just return. The vast, inconceivable source can't be faced or turned away from. Meet the ancestral teachers, be familiar with their instructions, bind grasses to build a hut, and don't give up. Let go of hundreds of years and relax completely. Open your hands and walk innocent. Thousands of words, myriad interpretations, are only to free you from obstructions. If you want to know the undying person in the hut, don't separate from the skin bag here and now. So, I was just talking about the same thing. Some of the things Shurto is talking about there. The senses, the shining window, the leaves spreading forth, the little hut. This is binding these grasses, picking up a cup of tea, fluffing up a cushion. Leaves spreading forth. Yes, the leaves. It's just that everything is always changing, and think, I'm going to get this all set and I'll get all the plants I want in this little plot, and then you come back a week later and ding, 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 ding. Yeah, that's all right. So our mind producing weeds, but we have some of the best weeds. I don't know about your weeds. I haven't had time to look around at your weeds here in Cleveland Heights, but we have great weeds where I come from. I mean, we have these flowers. I'm like, what? Is that a weed or a flower? I don't know. I'm blessed in my ignorance, Someone tells me like daisies are usually weeds. What's that? That's like as good as it gets. There's just this little face. Hello, I'm the universe. Beautiful. I'm going away pretty soon. Open your hands and walk innocent. So this is like an open-handed practice. Even actually when we hold the mudra here in Shashu, we're actually holding the same shape. So even though we close the hands in this way, the symbolic element of the mudra is that the hand is still open. And the open hand is a hand that holds no weapon. This is a long-standing symbol in many cultures of nonviolence. Just meet people. Even handshaking is like, I'm going to open my hand to you. We can open our hands to like everything. We are, and while we're practicing here, that's going to mostly probably feel like ourselves, because we kind of remove everything else, and then it starts to look like we're looking at ourselves. So that's a good place to start with nonviolence. So I take a lot of inspiration from a person named Bell Hooks, who's what's Bell Hooks? Is a longtime student of Thich Nhat Hanh, and also she's a scholar. She's written lots of books, and she's most associated with being one of the progenitors of intersectional feminist theory. That is to say, a way of looking at freeing people from suffering that's based in recognizing that everybody's position within culture tends to have be embedded in systems of dominance and oppression. And you can, if you look, you'd be like, well, that sounds, I don't know if that's really true. But if you look around, there's actually a lot of stuff that we don't usually see that's giving power to some people and removing powers from other people based on their race, the amount of money they have. This is an amazing one. Have you ever thought about this? No one in the United States could possibly claim that we have a justice system that treats people equally. Because we all know that if you have more money, you can hire a lawyer who's better. And there is no possible way to make an argument that it's not completely unfair. That's amazing. And yet we all just justice. And you have a big statue with just the chains. No one just puts stacks of money on one side and says, oh, this is what it actually is. So that's just one example. I mean, we could go on and on and on. On and on and on. But the really sad thing is, as people recognize I'm being dominated, the conditioned response is well, I know the best thing to do would be to become the dominant one. Right? It's you're this stupid mind is driving me around and I suffer so much because it's always jawing about the same old problems. And all I got to do is just get it to be quiet. When we bring that into all aspects of our practice, or I get driven by these feelings that I don't like, and I just shunt them away, ignore them, suppress them. Or, you're you read the news, perhaps, and you go, oh, these terrible people. All we need to do is get them to shut up, and we'll have the power, and they can't keep doing the terrible thing. So it's a very powerful tendency to always be thinking, oh, I'll just get into that dominant position, and maybe you think, well, I'm not trying to dominate anyone. But I think you should look really closely at the way your mind works with the universe. It tends to do this. And it ends up being really painful because one, it never works. You think I'm going to get everything in order. You ever I'm going to get everything in order. I'm going to control the situation, and I'll get the right degree, and I'll get a good job, and I'll get the right people, and everything will be fine. And then you get there, and you're the job drives me nuts, and the people are crazy. And so frustrating. So frustrating. The thing is, there's another way. So just be with and be with. So we chanted, is this the right one? Yeah, we chanted the Sandokai. This grasping at things is surely delusion. So grasping is like domination, right? It's a little act of violence and control. And so you're oh, sweet. Well, all I have to do is non-grasping. I'll just sit here and let everything go. But then the Sandokai says, according with sameness is still not enlightenment. And this is why Zen is kind of a bummer, You think you're going to grasp non-grasping. You do. I do. I'll be oh, sweet, I'm going to grasp non-grasping. Then everything will be cool. It is according with sameness is still not enlightenment. So the point being that there's still going to be diversity. There will still be leaves blooming forth on your little hut that you thought you got all in order. And it will keep changing. It's not one thing. You didn't get it down into one. If we think we've got everything packed down into one, we're clearly cutting off a sense of how rich and constantly transforming things are. So anyway, what was, oh yeah, Bell Hooks, why did she come here? Bell Hooks came here to tell me and you this thing that she wrote once. It is the most militant, most radical act anyone can make to not just speak of love, but to engage in the practice of love. For any time we do the work of love, we are doing the work of ending domination. And here's where her vision of any time we do the work of love, we do the work of ending domination. Her vision of how to participate in culture in a way that's liberative for everyone in all their various identities is so deeply connected to her vision of how to do liberation in the practice of meditation that she does every morning, which is to just keep offering something, to do the work, but find out how can I work in a way that's not about trying to dominate, to try and control, to try and make something happen. And this is pretty mysterious because we're very, very conditioned to think about working or doing things as creating effects, particular effects. That's how we measure. We're conditioned to measure what we do. And this is where Buddhism is very handy, because it tries to help us refine how to understand that we can act in a liberative way without trying to control or make something happen. And one way to think about it, like the most kind of technical way to think about it, is in terms of karma, which is to say that what will really matter is not the effect that we think we have produced or whatever thing we think we've controlled or managed or made happen or dominated, but just the quality, the affective quality that we have put into the world that motivated how we did what we did. The affective quality that motivated how we do what we do. So like when I come to my cushion and it's time to bow, if I'm like, God damn, Soto Zen, you got to bow 700 times. So I can do the bow and I'll be like, oh, I made a beautiful bow. And then I'll be like, but even though I don't like this, I'm making the most beautiful bow. So in that thing, like I did the bow thing, but what's actually getting put into the universe is all this like, right? On the other hand, if I come and it's just like, I pour my attention into that activity because I believe that pouring your attention into what you're doing matters for everyone, then the intentional energy is this one that's about, I want to free everyone from suffering by really being here in my life. And that will begin to reproduce itself within ourselves and other people. So I forgot, but I'll do it some more. I'll do it at some other times. I'll talk about it now. There's just a few things I think more good for us than to stop and renew and remind ourselves of the Bodhisattva vow. The Bodhisattva vow, where I don't know how you translate it here. We say, beings are numberless, vowing to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, vowing to extinguish them. Dharma gates are boundless, vowing to enter them. And Buddha's way is unsurpassable, vowing to become it. So, of course, it's like not something you're going to notice. The language makes it impossible to gain, dominate, or control the outcome because it's always this endless infiniteness. So the vow is embedded in it is the inability and the removing of the tendency to reinforce your idea that you're going to gain, control, or dominate anything. And then underlying it is just this sense of love. You care. And you're going to enact it. You're going to do this thing. And so, like, I say this thing so much because then, I mean, that's weird. I will not deny that it's weird for me to think I'm going to free all beings from suffering by the way that I pick up this chant book right now. That's straight up weird. I know it. But it changes things. It changes things. I mean, if I want to just like be like, well, can I find empirical evidence of this? Well, I can see that it changes the way I pick things up. And it changes the way I feel about it. And then that changes the way I treat people. So, I mean, you don't need to leap off the cliff of faith into just something for which there's no evidence. For most people I know who really keep reminding themselves daily, throughout the day of this vow, they see a change. And people will see a change from outside of them. Unless you start to, you get the little subtle thing where you're like, well, I'm really good at liberating all beings. Yeah. All you other people kind of have the idea of doing something help, but, in Soto Zen, we really got it nailed down. So that doesn't help. And of course, all, our conditioning is complex and all kinds of weird, harmful things seep into our consciousness all the time. Anyways, leaves. Hello. Hello. And with Soto Zen, the emphasis, Zen in general, like Chan Buddhism, and then its evolution into Zen, tends to really de-emphasize, I would say, a lot of the really excellent psychological tools of early Buddhism. So, Shurto wants to talk about like nature, immersion in activity, which is pretty different than the Buddha's like, you should be aware of your volitional impulses. Here are the 11 volitional impulses that are beneficial: faith, conscience, humility, lack of desire, aversion, tranquility, carefulness, equanimity, and nonviolence. Here are the volitional impulses that are harmful: anger, hatred, hypocrisy, malice, envy, deceitfulness, guile, arrogance, harmfulness, lack of conscience and humility, sluggishness, restlessness, lack of faith, laziness, idleness, carelessness, forgetfulness, distraction, and unawareness. Are you paying attention? So the early Buddhism, that tool of having this very specific list to be aware of, is really helpful. And the de-emphasis of it in Soto Zen is a lack, which I like to wander around trying to diminish. That is to say, when we're sitting here and we're like, I'm just doing Soto Zen, so I'm just being. I'm just like, there's breath, there's sensations in the body. You don't have to say all this stuff, of course, you're just feeling it, right? Because you're deeply immersed in your experience, I'm sure. None of you are sitting here just like, what am I gonna do on Monday? Okay, you might be doing that too. But anyway, so immersed in the body, immersed in the visual field, immersed in what is heard. Allowing the senses to bring consciousness into some kind of balance so it's not so dominated by the cognitive element. But the downside of that emphasis is you leave out this kind of carefulness of early Buddhism, which can really help. Because as I was talking before, the reason I'm getting into this is the seeping in, of the harmful tendencies. And it's just good to know they're there. So what I'll say to make this real simple, to not, get into like, here's how you develop mindfulness in 87 steps. When we're sitting here, it's really important that what is known is not just what's seen and what's heard and what's felt in the body, but what is felt in the affective or emotional field, how you feel, your emotions. We're likely, most of us will become a little bit more aware of our thoughts if you're sitting here in Zazen, because you're like, dang it, I thought I was paying attention to my breath and now I'm thinking. So you start to be aware. There's like a little space around some of the thoughts. You start to see them as phenomena that are arising, just like the light coming out of that light fixture. But some people, it's very natural for this to help them to evoke and be aware of their feeling states, but it's not universally true. And I think it's really, really important to make sure that we're being open and sensitive to the field, the sensory field of how we feel. You're just sitting here, you don't have to do anything to it, but just like you're like, oh, you heard that sound of someone move, and you notice, oh, that's a little anxious feeling. Well, you see someone move, and you go, oh, there's a little joy bubbling up. That's all. You don't have to do something to it. But the thing is, our consciousness is conditioned to pick things out of reality. So what is happening right now is really overwhelming. So like any one of the people in this room could suddenly become totally focused on like the grain of this wood and you'd be like, wow. I mean, if you've done enough Zen, you know that happens sometimes. Just anything in this, you could be like, whoa. And your whole consciousness can laser down on that. And sometimes your consciousness is more broad, but it's always picking things out of the flux of reality. All the time. It's not giving you an unmediated picture. So because that's happening within Zazen, we don't want to mess with it a whole lot. Zazen is not it's a very hands-off, open hand approach to meditation practice. But we just want to make sure that somewhere within us is this sense that it's important to know how we feel. Because that doesn't necessarily happen. And few things drive our behavior and our suffering and our freedom more than how we feel. And it's very easy to just let that be kind of hidden away. Just like if you're sitting here in Zazen and you're very focused on the breath, you might not hear any of the sounds outside. That might happen. So we're not doing anything but being more open and sensitive to the entirety of the field of experience. But making sure that that feeling part is included and cultivated. So, I don't know about you, but my mind is the conditioning to always be like, let me figure something out. It's very powerful, or what happened back then? What's going to happen? How is this right now? Yeah, anybody here spent like 15 minutes trying to figure out whether they should scratch their nose or not? I've done that. And it's amazing. In Soto Zen, you remove a lot of the external stimulus, and that allows you to see that your mind is just going to make those flowers and leaves, whatever the habituation is, it's just going to come up anyway. One of the best things is like when if you're Eno, do you call it Eno here? Mm-hmm. Like if you're like you're coordinating a retreat. So like I became Eno at our Zen center, and I was like, yeah, my mind just quiets down, when I go to Sesshin a lot of times it's really good. And it's like Eno, so we have big retreats with like 30 or 40 people, and you got to coordinate a lot of stuff. And I'd sit there and spend like a half an hour figuring out how to make a 2-sentence announcement. Just like, like, wow. So the mind is just conditioned to be this way. And there's a lot of reasons why it happens. Conventionally, the main driver from Buddhist, what do you call it? Yeah, Buddhist Dharma. That's is desire, aversion, and delusion. Desire, aversion, delusion. Desire and aversion being affective, having to do with feeling states, and delusion being having to do with more like the cognitive side, the more thinky part. But and that's a good way to look at it. Just seeing how I want, I don't want, or delusion basically meaning not recognizing that everything's connected from a Mahayana perspective. That's what delusion means. Just not realizing that everything's already intimate. You're already intimate. It's too late. I don't know why you come here, we got to practice so hard when you're already realization. How cool is that? The universe has realized itself, just like this. Somehow it feels like we're not separate from that a lot of the time. Maybe all the time. Anyway, so there's this, that's a good framing, but another way to think about it is, that I think is helpful is to think about like fear and anger. So like another common binary that drives human behavior is that, the fight, flight, freeze framework. So yeah, we're like defending ourselves against the universe. Like, oh, maybe finally I can be happy if I get everything settled down. Even like a lot of our altruistic impulses come from this. Because it's like, I read the newspaper, I'm like, jerks, I gotta stop. And it's like, in part, I want them to stop doing the thing I think is terrible because it's painful for me to be sitting there reading about it. I mean, so there's altruism there, but there's also just like, oh God, I want to stop having to wake up in the morning and feel this way. That's okay. I'm just a person. I want to be happy. That's normal. But we can approach this with open hands. With open hands. So there's a poet named Shingang. She was a great teacher, Linji, Chinese Linji, that's in the West, coming out of Japan, we call that Rinzai Zen. Her name is Shingang. I don't really pronounce Chinese, but I pronounce Chinese better than most people I know, so they think I can pronounce Chinese, but I really can't. Anyway, so Shingang once wrote, "A single meditation cushion and one is completely protected. Earth may crumble and heaven collapse, but here one is at peace. Sacred titles and worldly fame both fade away in the sitting, and the universe assembles on the tip of a feather. A single meditation cushion and one is completely protected. Earth may crumble, heaven collapse, but here one is at peace. Sacred titles and worldly fame both fade away in the sitting, and the universe assembles on the tip of a feather." So here it's like Shingang is recognizing fear as a big driver of why we end up feeling separate from the universe, feeling like we need to have to control, gain, get, attain. So when she says like sacred titles and worldly fame both fade away in the sitting, I don't know how heavy duty your mind is occupied with sacred titles and worldly fame, but that's just, she's like a Zen master. So that's like the milieu she's in. But say if you're working at a car dealership, you could say a single meditation cushion in one is completely protected, selling a bunch of cars, fade away. Whatever your mind wants to do to be like, that's the thing I have to get and worry about, and that can all fade away. That can all fade away. By creating this space where hopefully it's a safe environment for you. Hopefully. It's really important to make places for practice that are safe for everybody, and that has definitely not always been the case. But hopefully you can find a community, and this community can be a safe place for you where you can feel safe. But although she is encouraging, she's like, yeah, a single meditation one is completely protected. She's trying to encourage you to feel that way because she knows also we don't. Sometimes you'll sit down. Have you ever sat down for a retreat and you're like, oh my God, am I going to make it? Oh, scary. Just being here with my body for this long? Or, am I going to do something stupid? Everyone's going to think I don't know Soto Zen ritual right. Or whatever it is. So we want to bring into this sense that we're safe in this space. So we can open our hands. We can walk innocent. We can do the work of love. We can recognize we have a capacity to meet anything that arises with just this aspiration to not control things, but pour our energy into the possibility that everyone can be free. And if you do this here, you don't have to figure out how it's going to work here. But then maybe you sit down with your Zen friends later and you go, how am I actually going to make this manifest in my life outside of here? And you can find a way. You can start to see that. And also it will just naturally happen because you'll have planted seeds of compassionate presence and of just being here and caring. And not being like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just according with sameness. Dude, all is one. Right? You're engaged, fully engaged with what's here. And so you'll just start to be like this in your life. You'll meet conflict and you'll be like, I'm here. I'm not running away, but I'm safe. I can offer something, and that offering is not going to be making you do what I think is supposed to happen. It's going to be something else. I don't know what that will be. That's yours. That's yours to realize. All right, well, thank you. I think when we do sessions back in Minneapolis, we generally don't do Q&A, but I think it's nice because we have pretty limited time together to have some room for other voices. And so you're welcome to just make observations, talk about your experience, or ask questions, or anything. Yeah.
I have a question here from Steve, a Sangha member, who was there last night.
Oh.
And he couldn't make it today, so he sent me a text message.
Wow, cool.
He woke up in the middle of the night with this question running around his mind.
Wow.
Question for Ben. Last night you described mindfulness as, quote, awareness of X. In parentheses, he wrote body, emotions, thoughts, situation, in ways that are beneficial, unquote. Dean once told us that Zen practice is, quote, good for nothing, unquote. His question, what is the relationship between the nothingness of Zen practice and whatever it is that is beneficial about mindfulness? Is it just about tending karmic seeds, in parentheses, Thich Nhat Hanh, question mark? Or is there something other, is there some other benefit?
All right. Well, I just love the fact that the person who asked this question will not hear the answer. That's like, oh.
The world is going to hear the answer.
This makes me think of Bob Brown, if you ever watch the Story Talks.
Nice. Good old Bob. So, hey, Aaron, come on in. There's a seat right for you here. So yeah, I tend to not use the language of Zen being good for nothing, but it's a common way of teaching, and it is valuable. It relates to what I'm saying in that it's a way of cutting through our idea that we're going to gain, control, or dominate anything. So it's very hard to imagine how action can be beneficial if without trying to hold on to an effect. And so we say, there's nothing to attain. Zazen is good for nothing, as a way of like stripping away this constant monitoring that we're going to do. Like, is my Zazen good? Is it bad? Is it, and that ends up just wrapping our practice up in the same problem that's driving all human suffering. This constant evaluation to see if we are successfully controlling. To use the language of domination is probably excessive, But I would argue that all attempts to control have a subtle level of violence to them. Like real radical nonviolence is total freedom from any control. But the thing is, I'm like pretty human. I'm like highly problematically human. So I will not practice unless I see it appears evident to me that my practice is beneficial. So if I was doing this practice and was like, I don't see any evidence that this is beneficial, I would stop doing Zen practice. Personally, for me, I went from being a person who is in total emotional crisis and doing extremely harmful, unkind things to many people, including myself, to a person who is so free from that emotional reality that it's hard to even imagine that it ever happened. And a large part of that is because I've done this practice. And I'm like, I would like other people to be free. I've seen enough suffering. So, but the weird thing is, a lot of my practice involved sitting there and being like, yeah, this is good for nothing. So in a way, it's like the systems or the ways of looking at practice and Dharma that suggest that there's a progressive arc are useful because we're human beings and we need, where's your motivation going to come from? But it's very helpful to also put that down completely and just be like, I'm just here. And it's just like leaves and crickets and Aaron's laughing. There's the light is playing on the... Wow. I don't know if that's good for anything. Nice to meet you. Okay. Other the people who are actually here. You're here. That's right. That's intimacy. You're carrying a message for someone you love. That's good. Yeah.
When you say that you wouldn't do the practice if it's not beneficial for you, or if you feel like it, I'm not sure what you meant by that. Is that still a factor in your day-to-day practice, such that if you feel that you're urging to go sit, to get something out of sitting, you'll look into that and kind of maybe step back? Or is that not really what you're talking about?
I don't find myself needing to getting so grabby in my practice that I have to step away from it, just personally. But I would just say, for me, I keep trying to cultivate the sense that I'm giving myself to practice because it seems like it's a wonderful offering. So this is just another way of using language that's trying to make about open hands. Instead of I'm going to go do my practice because then I'll be better, or I'll be happier, or my family will be happier, or even that the world will be better. I just give myself to the practice because I kind of trust it. And I try and make that be the frame. And sometimes, I'll be like, oh, damn it. I sat down and I'm super agitated. And I get, it's normal. I'm not like, I wanted to be free. Oh, yeah. All kinds of things come up. So it's about the framing. The cognitive framing is one that's just finding different languages and ways of looking at it that are about just giving it away, giving yourself to it. Like when you put your head on the floor, just give your whole self away. Like when you're bowing, give your whole self away. No other voices?
One thing I wanted to add to what you were saying is someone years ago asked me about my practice, and they asked me about it being a faith. And I said, well, no, I don't practice Soto Zen Buddhism as a faith. Mm-hmm. But I said, I do have faith on my practice. It's a little different way of having been raised a Catholic.
It's funny, I'm actually planning to talk about faith in the second Dharma talk. So I may just say, good point. And let's come back to that interesting topic. And see, the thing is, I normally wouldn't want to give you a teaser on that because someone might leave. There are people who are like, even the word faith, they'll be like, oh my God, I can't be around these people. What is this? That's all right. Words, that's what I was talking about yesterday. Words have like very different power. But yeah, I'll be going to talk about that. So that'll be fun. I'll be like, you must believe in me. No, that is not what I will say. That is not what I will say. In simplest terms. Yeah. Well, get ready. Hopefully, I'll. Sometimes, it's very helpful to just go towards the heat. Just go towards the heat, and hang out with it. All right. Well, that seems like about right. So, thank you all very much. Do we close with the? We do. All right. Yeah. Nice. Our intention equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to read it.